On this week's episode of the Best of Johnston County podcast, our guest is April Barbour-Capps of the SECU Hospice House in Johnston County. We talked to her a little bit about Camp Courage, which is a free camp for children ages 6 to 17 that are going through grief. It is a tremendous asset for this community where children can get together and learn that they're not alone. We also talked to her a little bit about the evolution of the SECU Hospice House in Smithfield, how much it costs, and how your family can use such a great asset in this community. So if you're interested in general things about grief or this Camp Courage to help grieving children, listen in.
Welcome to another episode of Best of Johnston County, brought to you by Breeden Law Office. Our host, Jonathan Breeden, an experienced family lawyer with a deep connection to the community, is ready to take you on a journey through the area that he has called home for over 20 years. Whether it's a deep dive into the love locals have for the county or unraveling the complexities of family law, Best of Johnston County presents an authentic slice of this unique community.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Best of Johnston County podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Breeden, and on this week's episode, we have April Barbour-Capps, who is a social worker and bereavement coordinator for UNC Health Johnston and helps run the SECU Hospice House in Smithfield. And she's here to talk to us a little bit about Camp Courage, which is coming up on September 27th, 2025, which is a camp for children between the ages of 6 and 17 that they can go to and do fun activities and meet with people that are trained in bereavement and loss so that they can help process some of the losses they may have had. And we're going to talk a little bit about hospice in general and the SECU Hospice House and the services it provides. One thing that I have learned as we got ready to tape this is there's lots of hospice providers in Johnston County and not just one. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. But before we get to that, I'd like to ask you to like, follow, subscribe to this podcast wherever you see it, whether it be on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, LinkedIn, or any of the other social media channels of the Best of Johnston County podcast. The Best of Johnston County podcast comes out every single Monday and has now for almost 2 years. So go back and listen to some of our previous guests. We've had most of the county commissioners. We've had a lot of elected officials, small business owners, the county manager, Rick Hester, county parks director, Adrian O'Neill. A lot of great people have been on this podcast. If you love Johnston County as much as I do, this is the podcast for you. So be listening in. Go back and listen to some of the previous episodes. It's a lot of fun. We enjoy bringing it to you, and I think you'll learn a lot. Welcome, April.
Thank you.
I think I got the title right. I had to practice before we started.
You did.
Okay, I got it. That's a long title. So anyway, I get these titles mixed up, but I didn't call you Capps Barber.
You didn't. You did good.
I was going to do that too.
Good.
So it's Barbour-Capps. So anyway, all right. So state your name and what you do.
Yeah. So I'm April Barbour-Capps. I'm a social worker and the bereavement coordinator for the SECU Hospice House and our home hospice program, which is UNC Health Johnston Home Care and Hospice. So I'm the social worker and bereavement coordinator for both of those.
Okay. And what does that mean?
Yeah. So, good question. So part of a care team, hospice in general is a team of individuals, of course. So social work is one component of that interdisciplinary team. And as part of the conditions of participation for Medicare, we have to offer bereavement services for 13 months following a hospice patient's death. But even more so, we offer community bereavement services as part of those conditions of participation for Medicare. And a lot of our community doesn't know that. But we offer those services just as we would for a hospice family that we've served. We offer those for anyone in our community who's lost a loved one. So we have adult grief support groups that we run on a regular basis. First Wednesday night of every month over at the Medical Mall, we do an adult grief support group called Seasons of Grief. Myself and our other social worker, Heidi Erickson, who's a licensed clinical social worker, we run that group together. And then, like I said, her and I also split seeing all the patients on the inpatient side in the hospice house, as well as our home hospice patients as well, offering just supportive services, resources, short-term counseling, all the support that comes from hospice.
Okay, so how did you end up in this? I know you're from 4 Oaks. You went to Campbell. So how did you get started getting into social work and then in the bereavement business?
So I was going to be a journalism major. That was going to be what I wanted to do. I lost a brother in 1989 when I was between sophomore and junior year. of high school, South Johnston. And my brother was killed in a tragic car accident directly in front of the high school that I would keep attending for the next bit. So that changed the trajectory of what I realized I wanted to do, because I then realized there were no resources in our county for grief and loss, hardly any. There were no resources for my parents who were grieving the loss of a child, no resources for siblings grieving the loss of a sibling. There just weren't resources. And from there, I decided that grief and loss there would be resources at some point. So that is the direction I took. I went and got my undergrad from Campbell in social work, and then went straight back and got my graduate degree in community counseling.
Okay, I got you. And you've been with Johnston Memorial Hospital, now UNC Health, for 30 years?
30 years. I was an intern there in my undergrad and immediately finished my undergrad. They hired me, and I have been there pretty much either full or part-time ever since.
Okay, and have you been doing bereavement the whole time?
For the most part, yes. When I was hired in initially a discharge planning position, but that was brief. I immediately transitioned over to our home hospice, because at the time we didn't have hospice house then. So worked our home hospice side. Pretty much through the hospital, have fluctuated between case management, home hospice, and the inpatient hospice the entire time I've been at Johnston.
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, that's a long time. And you've seen a lot of change in that hospital.
Yes.
From a small community hospital in a rural area to being part of one of the larger hospital systems in this part of the country.
Yeah, the growth has been amazing to watch.
You enjoy working with the UNC Health team now?
I do.
And the resources they brought?
I do. Even though it's a larger system, there is still a sense of community, because so many of the employees of Johnston are still local people who still enjoy serving their own community, which is what's kept me here that long, is I enjoy serving the people in my own community.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, Camp Courage is a camp for children that are going through grief. Where did that idea come from? How does it work?
Yeah, so one of the social workers previously at the hospice house developed the concept for Camp Courage. And I want to say we did our first one back in 2011. 2014 was our first Camp Courage. Hospice house was built in 2011. So out of that grew recognizing that there's not a lot of grief resources for children in our county, and there's not. And so especially not resources that are free of charge. Camp Courage is made possible through UNC, through our hospital foundation, through donations from our community, specifically for the Hospice Fund and Camp Courage. And so from that grew this day program that we dedicate to helping children and youth learn how to cope better, learn better coping skills, be around other youth who have experienced a similar loss. And, I tell people all the time, that's where the magic happens, is putting kids with other kids who have experienced similar losses, and they realize, hey, I'm not the only person going through this. And it's an amazing day. We have volunteers from our public safety. We have volunteers from other therapists in our community, from school counselors, from our own social workers and counselors, and our hospice volunteers. It's just a great team of people that pull together that day to put on this program for children. It occurs outdoors, so we always say extra prayers for great weather. We've never been rained out, knock on wood, but we use nature and we use outdoors as part of the way to help children learn how to navigate grief.
So what are some things that everybody can do to navigate grief better, whether it be a child or an adult?
Yeah, so I would definitely say finding what brings you some peace and joy. So we teach kids, for example, and adults about coping strategies and skills. So if it's listening to music, if it's journaling, if it's taking a walk outside. Part of the stations that we do for Camp Courage involve drums and drumming and musical instruments. And so just trying to tap into any and every aspect that may bring you peace, may bring you joy, may create a diversion for you when you're struggling or stressed about grief, and also opening the door to make it okay to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about grief and death. Nobody wants to talk about it, but it is necessary. And it also helps with coping to open that door to say, it's okay to have a conversation about death and dying and about grief and loss, and realize that other people are walking that path too.
Yeah, well, and I think that's important, because I think a lot of people, they want to bottle it up. They want to try to deal with it themselves. They get out of their normal routine. They separate from their friends. maybe they don't go back to work, or they go back to work, they're going through the motions, and that's not going to help the situation, I don't believe.
No, we tell people all the time, you can tuck it back. You absolutely can tuck grief back. You can tuck it back. But at some point, it will rise to the surface. And if you've tucked it back, when it does rise to the surface, it'll be like a volcano erupting versus having faced it head on. We tell people there's only one way through grief, and it's straight through the middle of it. You can't go around it. You can't go under it. You can't go over it. There is no way except straight through the middle.
Yeah. And, sometimes we have to deal with death in family law because, sometimes our clients kill themselves.
Sure.
They kill their partners, or they kill their children. I've had to go through all of that. And that was a unique thing for me, particularly as a young attorney when it first started happening, because I'd been representing these people. I was trying to do what I could for them. And then all of a sudden they're gone. And the first thing I want to do is, okay, did I do something wrong? Could I have handled this case differently? Could I have done something? And ultimately I couldn't, right? Like I was just a lawyer. I was in their lives for some short period of time. I didn't cause it, but I did want to sort of initially blame myself when it was happening. I was a young man. I didn't quite understand it, but I learned to process it and deal with it and realize that I didn't do it, right? Like these people had whatever problems they had, and it is, and we have to work for our young attorneys. Unfortunately, we had a not too long ago where we had some family members get killed in a domestic violence situation, and it's a lot, and you have to be able to process. If you do family law, you got to get used to it. You know what I mean?
Right.
The other thing we see here is, I don't know, it's interesting, is that I think a divorce causes grief, right? Like I think you need to sort of, it's a loss. It's a significant loss. Maybe not the loss of a parent, but it's right up there as the stress thing. And so I've watched people over the 25 years I've been doing this go through those sort of stages of grief as we're trying to represent them, and I don't know them all. I'm not a social worker, but I know that it's a good place when you've processed it and sort of dealt with it. I don't know if it's the last phase or what you call it, but you're over it or whatever. Talk a little bit about the phases and how they work.
Yep. So I'll definitely say, I'm glad you used that terminology, because we always tell folks there is no over it.
Okay.
There's a carrying it with you, and a carrying it with you in a more healthy manner. Like that's the goal of grief, is to be able to remember, but with less pain than what you are experiencing in the moment. We often describe it as like a backpack. And at first, grief is really heavy, like someone's put rocks in it, and it's just super heavy, and you know that you're carrying it with you. You feel it every single day. But over time, as you allow yourself to process the grief, maybe access resources and get the support you need, it's like a rock comes out here and there. And you still know you're wearing the backpack, but it's lighter. And that's sort of how you're wearing the backpack, but it's lighter. And that's it just becomes a lighter experience but definitely around since the concept of hospice since the Middle Ages. So comfort care, dignity, quality of life, those things have been around quite some time. But, with grief itself, those stages are so fluid. Like I tell people, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was one of the pioneers in talking about those stages, bargaining and anger and acceptance and denial. But the thing about those stages is they're not pretty. And you don't go through 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4. You may go through 4, back up to 1, 2, then to 5, and then back up to 1 again. It's very fluid. As you grieve, you will not go through those stages pretty. It won't be like textbook. You will fluidly go in and out of those stages throughout grief.
Okay.
One day you may be angry. One day you may be back in complete shock. One day you may be more accepting of the loss. It truly does come and go through grief.
That is interesting. And it is interesting, in a divorce context where, a lot of times, we're talking to if we're talking to the spouse that wants a divorce, they have gone through those stages while they're in it. Wants a divorce, they have gone through those stages while they should have gone going through it.
Right.
Which means we could end up being the target of some of the anger and frustration that is part of the grieving process of the loss of the relationship that we didn't have anything to do with. Yeah. So
absolutely.
So we do. You're always cognizant of that, right? Loss is loss. But
there are multiple different kinds of losses.
Correct.
Absolutely,
correct.
Multiple different kinds.
Right.
Have family law questions? Need guidance to navigate legal challenges? The compassionate team at Breeden Law Office is here to help. Visit us at www.breedenfirm.com for practical advice, resources, or to book a consultation. Remember, when life gets messy, you don't have to face it alone.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the SECU. State of Wisconsin, SECU. Anyway, Hospice House. It's a place where you can go. We were talking. I did go to the ribbon cutting in like 2011. It was an absolutely amazing place. I did not know places like that existed. It did not feel like I was in a nursing home or a medical facility at all. Fortunately, I've not been back since the ribbon cutting in 2011. It has a chapel. I mean, it was just really nice. So talk about, what its purpose is, how people use it. Does it cost?
Yeah. So it's an 18-bed facility, all private rooms, private bathroom, private room, beautiful large windows. I mean, attention was paid to detail here to try to make it not look institutional in any way. Of course, we have things that we have to have as providing medical equipment and such, but great attention was paid to make it not look institutional. The rooms very much look home-like. To give an example, we have oxygen just like the hospital does through the wall, but it's in a cabinet. So it's not just in plain view, so that, you're not seeing things that are constantly reminding you or scary for kids that are visiting the hospice house. We try to keep those things camouflaged and make it look more like a home, your bedroom at home. We do still have an interfaith chapel. We have a children's playroom. We have a large family kitchen where families can come and have a meal together. And if their loved one's able to get out of bed and we're able to get them in a wheelchair, they can go we've had families throw birthday parties for their loved one in that big family kitchen. We have outdoor patio areas where families can take, their loved one outside, or families can go outside and just get a break. We have meditation rooms where families can just go and take a break from the room itself, or the stress of being in the room and watching their loved one die. Those meditation rooms are designed to just provide peace and comfort and a quiet time, a place for them to just be. Our staff utilize that some too, because as you would imagine, taking care of dying people every day is not an easy job, but it is an important one, and we're rewarded in other ways. Not a dress rehearsal, as I say about hospice. We get one chance. There's no do-overs. You get one opportunity to get it right for the patient and the family. And so staff are very committed to trying to make sure it's as positive of an energy as possible when we're dealing with these patients and families. No one likes to talk about hospice. No one likes to talk about death and dying, but the fact that we've received you in our facility means that you are faced with that. You and I spoke before the camera was on that people do graduate from hospice, so it happens.
We both have a mutual friend who graduated from hospice.
It happens.
Right.
It
does.
Yeah.
And that's great too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
hospice provides care for lots of different diagnoses. So a lot of times we don't see the graduation in care with our cancer diagnoses, because that typically takes, the decline. But Alzheimer's disease, sometimes end-stage heart disease or end-stage liver disease, sometimes we think, or maybe they've had an event, a hospitalization, and maybe they've declined in their eating and their drinking, and we think, okay, this is it. And then they come to us and we give such great tender love and care that they wind up improving and getting better, and then we have to help them get to the next place of care, whether that's home or rehab or whatever that might be. And we help them get to that next place. We don't just tell families, great, see you later. We help them find what that next level of care is. But we do have people that graduate. We do.
Right. Well, and to stay in the hospice house, you said the cost is $95 a day.
So that's the out-of-pocket for what room and board, we call it. That's the part that Medicare. So Medicare, Medicaid, and many of the private insurances will pay for the other services. What it typically won't cover is that room and board cost, because we are considered like a specialty care center. So that $95 a day is the out-of-pocket cost for the residential level of care. Patients that we have, hospice patients that we have that are experiencing some sort of out-of-control symptoms, out-of-control pain, maybe out-of-control nausea, and are requiring IV medications that we can't necessarily do at home, Medicare, Medicaid, private insurances will often pay for those days with no out-of-pocket, because it's considered a more acute level of care, and we're providing something we can't do in the home environment, so it couldn't be provided any other place except a clinical setting. And then we have respite stays for our home hospice patients and even other hospice agencies, where patients can come for 5 days and let families take a vacation or families take a break, or often we've had families need to get a knee replacement or maybe they're sick with the flu, and we just need somewhere the patient to be safe and receive care until the family is back where they can care for their loved one. So they'll come in for that 5 days, Medicare pays for that, and then they'll transition back home.
Right. Well, the last question I'll ask you is, there's more than one hospice provider in Johnston County, right?
Yes, there are.
And the hospital is one of them.
Yes,
or
it is.
UNC Health is one.
Correct. It is the best one.
It's the best one.
It's the best one.
Because it employs April
That's
Barbour-Capps.
right. It is. No, it's the best one because it's the best one.
It's the best one, right.
So a great question. Yes, there are multiple agencies that come into the county that provide home hospice services. None of those other agencies own or are affiliated with the hospice house. The hospice house is owned by UNC Health Johnston. So our home hospice and the inpatient unit are under the same umbrella. And so one of the biggest benefits I will say that sets us aside, so say we admit a patient to our home hospice program and things start to change, the care becomes too much for a family and they're needing to transition to the inpatient side for care, for safety. So we often are full. And so say we've got one bed open and 3 other referrals, some of which are from another hospice agency trying to get their person placed. Our bed goes to our agency because it's our agency. They're already our patient.
Already your patient.
And so we have to provide that service to our patient. And so being affiliated with our home agency also makes you affiliated with our inpatient side. And it's a benefit.
So how can people reach out to you and find out about Camp Courage, which is coming up real soon? You do it once a year.
It is once a year, September 27th at Sunlight Farms in Kinley. And you can find information on the hospital website. If you are interested in registering your child or getting more information, you can call me directly, 919-209-3478, or call the Hospice House main number, 919-209-5100. But anyone there can give you more detailed information, but we still have openings, so we would love to reach any and every kid or youth in our county. We actually get kids coming from Wake County, from New Hanover County, which is why I say there's not enough resources for children, because we get people from so many other places looking for that resource for their child.
So born and raised in Johnston County, been here your whole life. You said you've only moved 100 feet.
I know, 3 times and 100 feet each time. I know, right?
In 4 Oaks, what do you love most about Johnston County?
The sense of community, I would say. I was born and raised on a family farm. My dad was a farmer. The sense of community. 4 Oaks still has a huge sense of community. And even though Clayton and all its growth and some other places with all its growth, I still think that is something that sets us apart, that most times you will find someone you know. Yeah, and I just feel like that sets us aside from some larger places.
Oh, that's great. Well, we'd like to thank April Barbour-Capps for being our guest on this week's episode of the Best of Johnston County podcast. If you would do us a favor to like, follow, subscribe to this podcast wherever you see it. Tag us in your Instagram stories, Best of Johnston County. Leave us a 5-star review. Make sure you subscribe wherever you're seeing it. You'll be made aware of future episodes of Best of Johnston County. Until next time, I'm your host, Jonathan Breeden.
That's the end of today's episode of Best of Johnston County, a show brought to you by the trusted team at Breeden Law Office. We thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to sharing more interesting facets of this community next week. Every story, every viewpoint adds another thread to the rich tapestry of Johnston County. If the legal aspects highlighted raise some questions, help is just around the corner at www.breedenfirm.com.